We
He
are?
peed on it. He peed on it, so it makes it
I've
his.
marked this. Man, it was so long ago. Let's see here. What happened? Last time on the 13th Age and the Lost World, we came upon Ardent Crest, a city up in the mountains beleaguered by bandits. And we came there because we wanted to deliver all the stolen artifacts that we had recovered from our storming and subsequent reaving and looting and pillaging of the grayscale capital church. And we gave them back. We came up to Ardent Crest. We gave them back to the gold dragon lady, who was something with an A in the title, Amaranth. And basically she was like, well, that's very nice of you. Have magical items, all of you. So we all got a magical item, which was pretty great. Anarchin got a belt pouch for potions. And Graham got a magical shining plate mail, I think. And then I kind of forget exactly what happened. I think Jake, didn't you take the glove?
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I'm completely blanking on what Talsman Grimmeth picked. Anyway, we set off because we were like, well, you seem to have a lot of problem with bandits and monsters and stuff. And Amaranth was like, yes, they're coming from some sort of headquarters. We need to. We haven't been able, or I haven't been able to take care of because they have like ballistas and stuff, and they actually hurt me quite a bit. And we're like, well, we can handle that. And so we set off, and a huge battle ensued when we stormed their headquarters, killing everything and a hill giant. And Anarchin cast his circle of death and hit all the enemies except the giant, and missed all of his friends. So that was really good. And then we found the brain behind the operation, who turned out to be a bit of an idiot and a fall guy, basically. Having taken all of that out, we also found a maybe demented or maybe very pious paladin in their basically dungeon, and he said that he had been sent from Sterling Hold to do the light's work or something, the Great Silver's work. And he invited us to come with him, go north towards Sterling Hold, because surely there was going to be incredibly important things happening up there. And we, after much discussion at a downtime, said yes. With a vote to like 3-2, we decided to go to Sterling Hold instead of Crimson Peak. So we're heading northeast, and that has taken us very close to Dragon Hall, the old home of Anarchin, and who knows what horrors we'll find up there, because Anarchin can't speak for Sterling Hall, he's never been there, but Dragon Hall is a bad place. Yeah, I think that's it.
Alrighty. Just as an addition to the recap, the dear paladin, Faradas Markelson, as he's called, he basically told you that he is not originally from this continent, he came from the outside, and basically upon arriving here looked for the most dangerous quest imaginable and said, yes, that's what I'm going to do. And that ended up being going towards the Doom, which, of course, he didn't actually go to meet the Doom, otherwise bad things might have happened to him, but he met this bone dragon instead, this guardian, as he calls it, and has since then taken up a different purpose of, well, leading it around, basically, and now intending to return it. With that said, you are still in Ardencrest. As you remember, Faradas Markelson has told you that he's not going to Ardencrest because people tend to react rather badly when confronted with his companion, so he has taken up residence some distance away, made a little camp, and basically said, you know, if you want to help me, come meet me, otherwise I'm just going to do my thing again, as I have been doing the past few months, or years even. It is yet another day for you in Arden Crest, still located in the guest room of Amaram's workshop/home. The new day has arrived.
Cheap, bit of a lore question, I suppose. But could you remind me, when the invasion from the north came and reached Sterling Hold, what happened there?
The invasion never properly reached the city itself because the city was founded after the invasion.
All right.
First of all.
That makes sense then.
But generally, the people invading didn't really go too much into the mountains there, mostly because the terrain is rather treacherous. While it is not as huge of a mountain range as both the Glittering Peaks and the Great One's Spine are, it's still difficult to traverse, especially with an army. So the majority essentially went around the Lunar Gardens, further east into the plains there.
All right.
Of course, the invasion didn't really have to go into the Lunar Gardens to hit most of the Silver Dragons living there, because they, being Silver Dragons, had decided to fight them at the Glittering Peaks already, taking huge losses in that.
All right. So Graham probably, in his time, killed a few of those.
Most likely.
Right. Sure. That's something to note. Well, this place was founded afterwards, so, All right. Thank you.
And with that, there will be no one really accosting you.
Just sort of relax, chill out,
Yeah. Arden Crest is a city that has a few markets and shops, so if you wish to purchase any supplies, this would be a good spot. You can buy both healing potions and runes directly from Amaranth herself. Of course, she will not give you a discount, because she already sells these things at a loss, as does everyone. At least that's her opinion on this. But you can, of course, also buy general adventuring supplies should you feel the need about anything.
No, I mean, rope's always good. I don't know, is there a road to where we're going? Is there a path, a trail? Or is it like actual mountain hiking?
You would still have climbing gear from what I got for our patron before we left the Free City.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it would mostly be special items that you would have to tell me if you purchase them. You do, of course, have climbing gear, which is a special item, but rope and candles and torches, whatnot, that's fine.
All right, well...
As for is there a road towards Sterling Hold? The answer would be not really. There are roads connecting the different cities and villages, or used to be roads connecting the different cities and villages in the Lunar Gardens, such as Dragon Hall and Sterling Hold. But none of those roads really go towards the civilized west, as it is, nor south towards the Jarl. There are paths down south, definitely, but none really reaching towards Arden Crest.
All right, so we'd be doing some hiking before we got to a road. Is it possible in here to acquire a map of the Lunar Gardens, or at least how it used to look?
No.
No.
Those things are not available.
That would have been useful to know where to find a road. Well.
Yeah, maps, generally, if you were looking for maps for less civilized places, you would probably go to the Cloud Dragons, because they do make it a point to have added exploration to their things of what they do, which includes, of course, map making. And while there is a Cloud Dragon post in Arden Crest, they don't have those maps easily available.
All right. Do they have Cloud Dragons in Sterling Hold?
Sterling Hold is in complete ruins and has been for hundreds of years.
Nobody but undead live there, or are there?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's
also the stories say.
That's a great place. Let's get this guy there.
That was
For some reason.
was what was decided during the long and arduous discussion.
Graham thinks that perhaps when we go there, we could then continue down towards the lands of the Jarl and perhaps get a boat to go check out Respite or sail someplace else than the Luna Gardens there, because it does sound like a very dismal place, but it also sounds like a place his good friend and colleague, I suppose, Enriken, has some history, and well, he's been gone from there for a long time, and now there's sort of a chance to return. Perhaps it will also yield some information about what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Graham has never visited Dragonhall, so with his condition being what it is, perhaps he could glean something or learn something about what occurred. But that's a side objective. Yeah.
Yeah. Anrikin will have the last few days or so kept more to himself. You might have noticed him talking to Amaranth quite a bit first, and then he has been avoiding her.
Is Gilgalad still around?
Gilgalad managed, or rather was found by a few elves. Apparently something of his order or the likes. And he's been gone the last few days. He has returned eventually and said, if you're going to Stirlinghold, basically he'll catch up. He has ways. Don't worry about him, but there's something important he has to do.
Alright. Oh, that settles it. If that's where he's going to be looking for us, I suppose that's where we should go.
Now we go somewhere completely different. Like, oh.
Well, I suppose Graham would want to speak to the others that are available then. About this thing. So if we gather around the tavern or something like that.
Sure.
Whatever is available, where we sleep, where we eat. Graham has learned that if you want to find someone, generally go there while they have a meal, because they won't really, they're not going to just stand up and leave their food if they don't want to talk to you.
I've been sleeping at Amaranth's house. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, Graham's not really been there much, because that was that whole awkward, are you going to kill all of us? I mean,
Yeah, Anakin hasn't been there for a while either.
But he'll be there now.
Sidling in.
He's like, I was invited, just chose not to take advantage of the hospitality at that time. So he'll go in and probably sit down with the others. I don't know if Enriken's there. Edeling is definitely not there, though. He's out. Didn't want to bring that in here. Seemed rude. Begin to grow a little conscious to that. People don't seem to like it. She'll sit down and look to these the two of the others. So yeah. So it seems like the real offer we have for aiding someone is going north. Excuse me.
Why are we gathering? Over here? Okay.
I mean, you don't have to be here.
No, I'll be here.
If you're all away.
I just had to step away for a bit.
Sitting down the others down. Looks at them, receiving no answer.
I didn't hear the question.
Sorry if I'm interrupting your meal. I just thought we should at least talk about it we were going to sort of do more things together, and we worked well together, and we sort of probably still wanted in Coppergate. It was probably spread to the Free City at this point. Crimson Peak, perhaps, even.
Enrican looks at him. Yes.
Looks more to fancy in Dimezz, really. See, yeah. And I thought going north would be less confrontational than going anywhere else. And looks, I imagine the room is very quiet except for a tall clock that's ticking obnoxiously loud at this point. Just no words. Although I think I'll be outside. It stands a little bit
Enrican holds up a hand.
awkward conversation.
That bids for him to stay for a little bit at least.
He looks at Enrican.
And Enrican has placed a small book on the table. Graham has seen him read this book before. From time to time. It looks quite battered and bruised. It has a few leather straps around it, like holding it shut. And he usually keeps it in one of his satchels, like his waterproof satchel, basically, so it shouldn't be too damaged. He looks at everyone and says, going north will perhaps be less political than going to the other places, but it might not be that much safer. In fact, it might even be more dangerous. Looks at the others. We are going towards the Doom, which might be one of the single most dangerous entities on this entire island. The only saving grace is that it is somewhat inanimate, I suppose. But more so, we will probably pass fairly close to Dragonhall, my home, or my former home. It is mostly a ghost town and a ruin now. And I thought that if we are going so close to my home, and so close to what made me, I owe you a bit of answers, perhaps. Or at least a recounting, a telling of something of what happened in Dragonhall. Looks at the journal and then looks at the others again and says, I don't recall much, honestly. It's just vague memories, fear and colors and fog. After I woke up, grimaces. Exactly what happened I don't know, but here in front of me, he pats the small journal. There is a recount of what happened. It is not perfect, but it is the best one I have found. The best one that I brought with me out from the ruins. And if you would permit me and indulge me, I would read from this journal for you, and perhaps then give you a small idea of what we are going into. He looks around. Then, let's see here. He unfastens the leather straps around it, and flips open the journal, flips through it a bit, and goes towards the end, like the last 5 pages or so. And he'll say, this is the journal of the scholar Hubertus Andal. He was quite famous in Dragonhall as a chronicler and a keeper of books. And this is what he wrote. The heaviest mist in the history of the town settled over the community at around 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. All travel has stopped and the mist hangs like a pall over everything, Lights of ordinary intensity fail to pierce the fog, which is constantly growing heavier. Scholars here are unable to agree as to the cause, and the local magistrate states that the like has never occurred before in the history of the city. At roughly 7 p.m., the fog had increased noticeably. All lights were now invisible, and the town was shrouded in pitch darkness. As a peculiarity of the phenomenon, the fog is accompanied by a sickly odor, comparable to nothing yet experienced here. He flips a page. Accounts as to the origin of the mist differ greatly. Among the most unusual is that of a sexton of the local church, who clawed his way to town hall in a hysterical condition and declared that the fog originated in the town churchyard. It was first visible as a soft grey blanket clinging to the earth above the graves, he stated. Then it began to rise higher and higher. A subterranean breeze seemed to blow it in billows, which split up and then joined together again. Fog phantoms, writhing in anguish, twisted the mist into queer forms and figures. And then, in the very thick midst of the mass, something moved. I turned and ran from that accursed spot. Behind me I heard screams coming from the houses bordering the graveyard. Although the sexton's story is generally discredited, a party has left to investigate. Immediately after telling his story, the sexton collapsed and was taken to the Dragonhall Hospital unconscious. He flips another page. The rescue party, which went out at 11 p.m. to investigate the weird story of the origin of the fog, which, since late yesterday, has shrouded the city in darkness, has failed to return. Another larger party has been dispatched. Meanwhile, the fog has, if possible, grown heavier. It seeps through the cracks in the doors and fills the atmosphere with a depressing odor of decay. It is oppressive, terrifying, bearing with it a subtle impression of things long dead. Residents of the city have left their homes and gathered in the local church, where the priests are holding services and prayer. The scene is beyond description. Grown folk and children are alike terrified, and many are almost beside themselves with the fear. Amidst the wisps of vapor which partly veil the church auditorium, the old priest is praying for the welfare of his flock. They alternately wail and prostrate themselves. From the outskirts of the city may be heard cries of unknown voices, the echo through the fog in queer, incandescent minor keys. The sound resembled nothing so much as wind whistling through a gigantic tunnel. But the night is calm and there is no wind. The impossible has happened. No new messages have come into my room for 30 minutes or so. We are cut off from the outside and even the streets below us. I will stay here and document, as is my duty, until the end. It is the end, indeed. And he flips another page. Since 4 p.m. yesterday, the fog has hung over the city. Following reports from the sexton of the local church, 2 rescue parties were sent to investigate the conditions of the outskirts of the city. Neither party has returned, nor was any word received from them. It is quite certain now that they will never return. From my chamber I can gaze down onto the city below me. From the position of this room on the 13th floor, nearly the entire city can be seen. Now I can see only a thick blanket of blackness where customarily lights and life were. I fear greatly that the wailing cries heard constantly from the outskirts of the city are the death cries of the inhabitants. They are constantly increasing in volume and approaching the center of the city. The fog yet hangs over everything. If possible, it is even heavier than before, but the conditions have changed. Instead of an opaque, impenetrable wall of odorous vapor, that now swirls and writhes a shapeless mass in contortions of almost human agony. Now and again the mass parts, and I catch a brief glimpse of the streets below. People are running to and fro, screaming in despair. A vast bedlam of sounds fly up to my window, and above all is an immense whistling of unseen and unfelt winds. The fog has again swept over the town, and the whistling is coming closer and closer. It is now directly beneath me. God! An instant ago the mists opened and I caught a glimpse of the streets below. The fog is not simply vapor, it lives. By the side of each moaning and weeping human is a companion figure, an aura of strange and varicolored hues. How the shapes cling, each to a living thing. The men and women are down, flat on their faces. The fog figures caress them lovingly. They are kneeling beside them. They are... I dare not write it. The prone and writing bodies have been stripped of their clothing. They are being consumed piecemeal. A merciful wall of hot, steaming vapor has swept over the whole scene, and I can see no more. Beneath me, the wall of vapor is changing colors. It seems to be lighted by internal fires. No, wait, it isn't. I have made a mistake. The colors are from above, reflections from the sky. Look up. The whole sky is in flames. Colors as yet unseen by man or demon. The flames are moving. They have started to intermix. The colors are rearranging themselves. They are so brilliant that my eyes burn. They are a long way off. Now they begin to swirl, to circle in and out, twisting in intricate designs and patterns. The lights are racing each other, a kaleidoscope of unearthly brilliance. Flips to the last page. I have made a discovery. There is nothing harmful in the lights. They radiate force and calm, almost cheeriness. But by their very strength, they hurt. As I look, they are swinging closer and closer, 1,000,000 miles at each jump. Millions of miles with the speed of light. Aye, it is light of quintessence of all light. Beneath, the fog melts into a jeweled mist, radiant, rainbow-colored of 1,000 varied spectra. I can see the streets. Why, they are filled with people. The lights are coming closer. They are all around me. I am enveloped. And the last page is empty. Anarchin looks up and slowly closes the journal, puts it back on the table in front of him.
Grim sort of shifts his weight uncomfortably.
So, if he was being surrounded by lights, how did he have time to write all of that in the journal?
Anarchin looks at her. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the ghosts or beings did. Or maybe he was very dutiful.
Uh-huh.
But this is what we're going towards. I have not been in Dragonhall since this happened. And I woke up in Outskirts. If you want to make your way north, I would suggest that we try to avoid Dragonhall for now. I don't know what dwells in there. I don't know if we will survive it, as we are right now. I am stronger than I've ever been. Probably so you as well. But the doom of Dragonhall was... something else. He sighs.
Nods slowly. And you remember... you... nothing?
Shakes his head. No. I remember the mists coming into town, and I remember the panic, and then nothing. Until I woke up, gasping and naked, several kilometers from town. I only saw shapes of it in the mist. And I dare not go closer. Instead I ran. I'm not proud of that cowardice, but someday I swore to myself that I would return and cleanse it. Or at least find out what did it. Stop it, so it doesn't happen again.
Nods. Again.
And I don't know. When Graneth performed his ritual, when the cracks started to appear on the floor, I sensed something, a familiarity of what lay beneath. I don't know what he tried to summon, but whatever it was, I think is akin to what happened in Dragonhall. Maybe that was one of his ceremonies or rituals succeeded. Maybe it was the first incursion of these things, this power, or it's just a residue. This happened a while back. I personally thought that the Doom was perhaps responsible for it, and if we go up towards it, maybe we can learn more. As such, I am willing to go north.
No, it's nearing Sterling Hold, nearing the lair of this Doom. Discuss a little bit of the word. It will not. Stuff a little bit. Says, if you can sense the same energies there as we did here, perhaps the Doom would be responsible. And Graneth could have lied, made a trick, made us fear him more, tried to make his patron seem worse or stronger than he is. He might have looked into who we are just as we looked into who he was. Going there will confirm or deny the possibility of, well, of it being the Doom that caused it, somewhat at least.
Henrikin nods.
If we find that it isn't, that this incident, which, she looks at Henrikin, might have happened as described, or might not. It did destroy, as I understand, a large city, and perhaps even more of the region. We will not really know what happened until we go there and look in the region and see if it is the same thing, and someone is tampering with that sort of destructive power, then
Yes.
then perhaps some of the more rambling things that Graneth said could be construed to be true.
If whatever caused Dragonhall to fall, I have sworn to stop it from happening again, and if there are answers to be had in the region, I would want to try to seek them out, as you say.
I don't think anyone would want to have such a thing happen again. Don't. And then again, with Graneth, there might just be those who do.
Henrikin nods slowly. He was not alone, and I hardly think we got all of them by destroying that room and the creatures in it.
No, I am inclined to agree. If they indeed are using the same sort of power, they must have learned it from somewhere. Perhaps a connection will be found. I understand that few people live in this area compared to when I first. But It does not seem likely that we will find direct correlations. Still, it is worth a try, and our other connections to this are rather thin.
Anakin nods. I am aware that going north is perhaps more important to me than to others in this group. It is something that has affected me on a very personal level. And although the mad cult of Granite is a threat we all recognize and want to stop, my reasons for going there is stronger than yours. And so I certainly cannot expect you to go, nor can I really demand it. I can only ask that you would accompany me on this journey.
Graham just nods.
Anakin looks over to Dimezz and Fancy.
Fancy has narrowed eyes and favors her cup of liquid and does not look particularly convinced or engaged, as if over half of that lengthy, wordy odyssey just pretty much like flowed right through her. She says, I'm willing to go because we all traveled to Ardencrest. Though I remain doubtful and suspicious.
Dimezz kind of looks up at the ceiling for a second, and when he looks back down, he says, that's some end of the world style stuff. And you're saying here, Enrikin, it's kind of frightening.
He nods.
And out of respect for you, I can, tag along a little while, but it's not really why I'm here, if you understand.
He nods again. The alternative would have been to go somewhere else, south, perhaps to Crimson Peak, but he shrugs.
Graham nods and says, if I could face the reason for me being here, I would want to. Not knowing is destructive in the long run, I feel. As I would not suggest that you run away from this forever. And, well, our tasks have not been without danger. Waiting too long might be just as detrimental as waiting too little. Gil-galad said that he would meet us on the way. I suppose we should simply accept that then, and get the journey started.
Anakin nods. Moves to gather his stuff. Leans heavily on the staff as he rises up. Looks at the others and says, thank you.
Graham looks to whatever Fancy's drinking. Sort of says, is there any more of that?
Fancy looks over at Graham, says, I don't know.
Well, gonna go see if there's more of that. And then he'll do that.
Fancy, Graham, walks away, part way, and then Fancy looks over to Dimezz, not hiding, the volume, says, I didn't think he could drink, Dimezz. Thought he couldn't taste anything. Thought it was bad for him.
Dimezz just kind of snorts and smiles.
Has he been lying to me?
You know, maybe he, sometimes just does it anyway, out of habit. Think he used to be an alcoholic?
Oh. Oh, that makes sense. Graham could totally hear that. Fancy didn't bother, like, modulating her voice.
You know, right now, the mood is so that he's been so social these days with the party and it's just, you can't look into your glass. You don't have any excuse to not. Yeah, he feels like he wants to drink, but of course he won't really get drunk. But
It's probably
no, sometimes you just have
it's
to
not
try.
even like alcohol she's drinking. It's like ginger ale or something.
Yeah. We'll have to deal with that later, since he doesn't really have a metabolism. But tomorrow's Graham will have to deal with that. And so I suppose eventually we'll all get our stuff together and prepare to leave.
I suppose so.
All right. Leaving to meet Faradas and his bony friend. And sure enough, he is exactly where he told you he would be. Some distance away from Arden Crest, like half an hour walk at max, in a campsite somewhat next to the road, but not quite immediately visible as to perhaps avoid scaring people on accident. And as he sees you approach, his face, with all the creases of age, does light up rather significantly as he spreads his arms in greetings and says, "Marvelous! I take it you have accepted my quest?"
Yes. For now, we will be traveling together towards Sterlinghold in the north.
Marvelous indeed. A man is only as brave as his companions, as I used to say back when I was a bit younger. And with you at my side, and with you at my side, even death incarnate could not scare me any longer. Which is exactly what some rumors suggest resides at Sterlinghold, so... Well, I personally do not believe these exaggerations. What is now known as the doom of this world was once a paragon of virtue. And his victory over the true evil should not condemn it to forever carry such a nickname in our afterlife. Regardless, I do not expect us to have to enter Sterlinghold proper. We simply have to get close enough so that its remaining guardians try to stop us, after which we simply leave our bony friend in their care and retreat. Once reunited with his brethren, he should not wander lost any longer, I hope, and once again find his purpose. We shall travel north, whenever you're ready, of course. Trying to cross the mountains would be a foolish endeavor, and we're in no hurry. Before we head out into the icy cold of the plains to the east, we will stop at the quaint coastal village of Farnsholm to purchase whatever supplies we need. I would not want to rely on these small villages around here and buy whatever food they might have left. They have suffered greatly under these bandits. And I do still have enough supplies to at least reach Farnsholm. The journey towards the aptly named Lunar Gardens will be difficult, and I should know I've gone the entire way twice now, but I think you will enjoy its beauty. I did not go close enough to see what remains of the city of Sterlinghold myself yet. When I set out with the foolish intent of aiding the doomed struggle, I did eventually change my mind. It is a place of dangers, if the stories are even remotely accurate. It was exactly what I was searching for back then, when I was longing for one last grand adventure before old age takes me, but When I found my friend here, the Lost Guardian, I had new purpose. A purpose that we together shall endeavor to fulfill even. And after that, I'll probably retire. Sighs a bit and smiles. Shall we head out then?
Anarchy nods. Let's.
Yeah.
He takes a little while gathering his belonging, packing his small tent, of course shouldering his trusty iron pot. After which he gestures to you and makes his way, first of all, down the mountain and eventually heading north.
Right.
And if you point
Yes.
your views to the world map, I can show you where his first destination is meant to be.
Into the shimmering coast.
Yes.
What do we know about the shimmering coast, Chief?
The Shimmering Coast is mostly called that because it is a heavily forested area with trees, mostly pine trees and other trees rather resistant to cold, that is pretty much at any time of the year covered in both mist and snow and, well, basically snow, which, given good conditions, such as sun and no clouds, makes the entire thing rather, well, interesting to look at if you're looking at it from the sea, as the entire forest seems to really glow and reflecting the sunlight in the many leaves of the trees. The coast itself, the forest of the Shimmering Coast itself, isn't incredibly densely populated, but there are villages. Not exactly cities, but small and big villages, mostly along the coast. It's mostly a combination of the wood elves and humans, as well as a mixture of the other races living there. And while none of them really want to associate with the proper, like, civilized west of the area ruled mostly by the architect, they do trade quite a lot, which has, of course, meant that whatever culture they might have had in the past developed in those forests, it's still there, but they are words. There's villages and there's people. And while they do have their own culture, they do like trading a whole lot because it brings with it wealth, not only in the form of currency, but also in the form of luxuries and convenience. Yeah, that's basically about it.
All right. Well, sure.
And
Decent
the
place.
village of Farn's home is right here in this little bay.
Is that
The-
tiny little bay?
Yep. Well, it's a rather large bay, but this is the world map, so it looks small.
Mm-hmm.
It is the southernmost of the villages and the most traded with also. Not the biggest one, but it's up there. And
Call it East Haven.
that is where Faradas would like to lead you. Down the mountains and then along the coast. The travel does take a while. While the way down the mountain is, of course, made easier by the many hidden stairs and paths that, again, your trusty clockwork Drake can point out. Although you might just remember that. And the way along the coast, while there isn't really a good path, there are some paths, and the travel there really isn't much of a problem. It does take longer, of course, than traveling along the fortified cobblestone roads of the west, but it's not that big of a deal. 4 days later...
It's a big deal for Fancy. Like, in following this insane person, wanting her to take to places that she doesn't even understand because she's so unfamiliar with wilderness, she's not happy.
Yeah, while the travel north certainly does go through what people would consider wilderness, it's not the kind where you really can get lost because the ocean, at least, is always in sight. But eventually you do enter the forest of the Shimmering Coast, the Shimmering Forest as it is so aptly called. And things do change a bit. It is incredibly dense. Perhaps not as dense as the Fenwood, not as dense and as dark, but certainly deeper than the Deepwood, even though the name would not suggest that. But while there are not many paths, there are sort of improvised mini roads going north, as it does seem like the way from Ardencrest up there isn't entirely unused. And eventually, you do arrive in sight, and I would like to point you to a new map.
All right.
Which
Should we bring our tokens?
Yes, please.
All right.
Which is visible now. You do not see much of the... Sorry?
No, keep going.
You go ahead. I can do description later.
I'd say Graham probably is a little nostalgic in this place because this sort of icy, frosty forest reminds him a lot of what the place in his childhood was like. At least like most of the year. In the summer there was of course green grass and such, shown, but most of the time things were cold. He likes it cold.
Yeah, you do not get to see much of why the Shimmering Forest is called the Shimmering Forest, as the weather is not on your side. The ocean inside also shows you that, well, it's rather stormy. It is wet, it is windy. Not enough, of course, to hold off any determined adventurers, but certainly enough to maybe make the travel even a bit less comfortable. And arriving at the city, or the village really, the village really is not the first thing that comes into view, or the first thing that you would notice. As in the ocean, at the shore of the village, the coast, is a behemoth of wood and steel that dwarfs even the entire village. If a frigate was a building, the frigate would be a shed compared to the castle that is whatever ship is sitting here in the harbor. Of course, it's not really docked at the harbor because it is absolutely massive and far too large for any pier of any sort. It also looks rather dented, really. The steel armor plates in the far back of the ship, as if some great thing had taken a sword and left a big slash, which seems to be leaking a significant amount of water into the ship. Although it does look like that really doesn't matter to the ship at the very moment, because it very much seems to just lie on the bottom of the shore's waters here. It is not abandoned, quite the opposite. There are plenty of people visible on its top, as well as a number of rowboats currently trying to fight the weather, trying to repair the slash in the ship's hull with pretty much fire, it seems, as they are scorching the metal. Compared to the ship, the town really isn't that special. A collection of wooden, although sturdy buildings, the snow that is undoubtedly going to come soon after the rain, currently secondary to the actual torrent that is falling down. And it is also rather crowded as you enter it. The two separate groups of people easily visible. On the one hand, there are those wearing woolen hats and shirts with pantaloons made from thin but rather sturdy-looking thread. Many of them also having suspenders essentially to keep their pants up. Whereas the other group of people wears things that might be more to what Graham remembers was fashion back then. It's certainly nothing like the vivid colors that you would find in the Free City and the surrounding area, but more like warm, sturdy, and functional.
Has Anakin ever seen anything like that ship in his entire life?
It's very unlikely that any of you have ever seen something like this, although the ones who might have seen something, well, remotely similar would most definitely be Dimezz, as well as perhaps Fancy, if she ever frequented the harbor of the Free City. There were certainly some of the merchant vessels that were far smaller, but certainly showed similarities. Dimezz would know this to definitely be a vessel of the outsider, except he probably didn't know that there were any of this particular size.
What?
Anakin is just dumbstruck at the size of this thing.
What sort of scale are we talking here? Like, how many stories tall? Like, I'm trying to get in my head sort of the.
Imagine the biggest galleon you can think of, and then take 4 of those and tape them together.
Would this be like for a modern day
Like-
reference to try to get the size? Is it like a cruise ship or like what's the?
A cruise ship, perhaps an aircraft carrier would come close to the image.
Jesus!
So it's like
Jesus
it's like
Christ.
many people tall.
Yes.
All right. Well, Graham looks at it in disbelief, I suppose. Someone sailed a metal fortress onto the beach here, and someone else ripped it in half.
Holy
Or
crap!
like cut the back end off of it.
Even to someone who really doesn't know too much about ships, although Graham might know a bit, this very much looks like the ship didn't really intentionally dock here, but rather crawled here to avoid sinking.
Yeah. No, I mean the ship of his people, you were low bottomed, so you could pull them up on shore. But he doesn't. That's not what happened here. Like, these guys didn't pull this thing up to dock it by. All right. Well, he feels very old when he sees this. You know, back when he sailed, you barely, like, the big ones had like a ballista on it. That's sort of the fanciest you could get here. Now they have getting all this shit. All right. Well, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to react. He has no reference for this sort of thing.
It certainly looks ominous in the current weather conditions.
Yeah, he doesn't like the weather.
And while its exact armaments aren't really visible at this distance, it has many.
He looks to the others, and as he looks to their guide, as he just sort of.
Well, I can tell you
What is
with
that?
I can tell you with absolute certainty that this wasn't here when I came through here. Although that, of course, was some time ago.
Is it a ship of some sort?
He
How would
shrugs.
so much metal float?
I do not know, but I've seen ships, of course, many of them, many of which would perhaps evoke similar responses of what you're currently having, although, of course, this ship compared to the most grandiose ship I have ever seen on the mainland, there's no comparison. Of course, the technology does look familiar. The ship I came with did have similar armor, but it was not this big. This ship hardly looks like it could float at all. And in fact, I do believe that it currently is not floating.
It looks a bit more dumbstruck at the words of technology and more stuff about the mainland, and just sort of looks to Dimezz.
Dimezz shrugs. They never had anything like this where I came from.
Well, what's it doing here?
I have no idea. Presumably docking.
What would you ever need a thing like this for?
Sailing?
Or is it
When you carry a lot of cargo or people.
incredibly impractical.
Oh, I agree.
You would need if you needed to evacuate a whole city, perhaps. Looking at it.
Just building one of these things was sort of shakes his head. If we had these, just shakes his head. I'm older than I thought. Shakes his head again.
Never seen anything like it. American looks around for. It's a bit lost at the sight of this huge, enormous thing.
Currently, I assume you're kind of standing dumbstruck at the entrance to the village, essentially,
they're
somewhere.
very colloquial. Just standing there like, what?
It does happen that a person rather close by sees you gaping at the ship and does apparently change his course and approaches you instead.
Scam us.
Exactly. He's going to offer a tour of the ship for like 200 gold pieces.
In one hand, he's currently holding a piece of some sort of dried meat that looks like something you could buy at a food stand or something. And he's generally dressed in similar clothing as the people who Dimezz would definitely recognize as wearing fashion from the mainland, as it were. But
I don't know how it could be dried with this weather I'm seeing in this picture.
wet dried beef.
Sort of reconstituted.
The person certainly doesn't look like he minds the rain too much.
Well,
He has the sort of look of a grizzled veteran who has seen much worse. And as he approaches you, he kind of stands next to you, also looking at the ship, smiling slightly as he turns towards you. She's quite marvelous, isn't she? The FF Savarette. She's mine, you know. The ship, it's called Savarette. The FF stands for Floating Fortress, because that is what she is.
Haruki just looks at him.
Aptly named, I believe.
Apologies for ambushing you but new arrivals here in this village seem very scarce, and currently I would take anything to disrupt the monotony. My name is Admiral Alexander Edward, and as I said, I command her. Or would if she could currently move, which she cannot. He frowns a bit.
Haruki is going to do like a wisdom check on this guy, see if he's telling the truth, because that seems a bit suspicious.
Fancy doesn't need a wisdom check for that. She's already put him in the same category as Baldy over there.
Yeah, she's got that.
I have to deliver it to I need people to carry it to Sterling Hold.
Oh.
Right, give me a find out if he's
Yeah,
13
I would
fucking
like
with you
to check him up too, because that it seems very convenient that he would sort of, or maybe he just really likes bragging about his fancy ship.
I mean,
You know,
I
that's
would.
also a,
I would certainly brag about it if I had
one,
it.
I was like, oh yeah, that's my ship. You know.
Well, to both Enrican and Graham, it might perhaps seem a bit convenient that a person would just randomly appear and say that he in fact owns this behemoth. On the other hand, he does seem to fit in with these outsider people rather well, and neither of you can really know if he's telling the truth or not.
I'm kind of skeptical.
Oh well, this is so what is it doing here?
Well, here in this very location it is because it is trying not to sink. It is only one of three of its kind. Of course, not quite the most advanced one, only the second in line, as it were.
Frowns. He doesn't believe that.
We've had a bit of a encounter while traveling through the mists. These ships are meant to not only go through the mists surrounding these islands, but essentially travel through them indefinitely. Of course, this basically is a prototype, and apparently Not a very successful one for that, as we were attacked by, shrugs a bit, something that we still don't know exactly what it was. We do know that it left a rather significant dent in the ship's hull, as well as damaging what makes it float, essentially. For this ship, it's not like other ships. It's new.
Magic.
Yes and no, my friend. The construction itself, the weapons and such, are not magic, but its power source one could call magic. It uses something that is unique to this very continent here, a tree of sorts. In fact, the core of a tree. A crystal tree, that is. One that supposedly grows above ley lines and such, but I'm not a scientist.
Has Anakin ever heard of magical crystal trees?
I'm
You know-
just gonna go look over here. Fancy like walks away to like a bluff.
Dimezz says, yeah, that is pretty interesting, that puddle.
Before you leave my little friend over there, might I ask you one question?
Dimezz turns
Are you
around.
Dimezz?
Fancy doesn't stop walking because she's certainly not middle.
Dimezz looks around like, is there another short person over here?
Considering the rather limited amount of halflings on this very continent, maybe my question is not as far-fetched as it could be, for I do not believe that too many people would intentionally lose themselves in a town as distanced as this. Really not much to do here. But are you by chance a halfling going by the name of Dimezz Tristram?
Dimezz nods slowly.
Oh, that is interesting. Please, I would like to invite you, all of you, even your friend who has just wandered off, to a meal, perhaps even a place to stay if you need one. I can assure you that the guest rooms of the Saret are not only dry, but also rather spacious.
The first
It is-
thing Dimezz says is, oh, sorry, you're none.
It is, of course, not only an offer of hospitality, but mostly so. I am rather curious about a few things, Dimezz in particular. I've heard some stories, and I would love to quiz you on them in a sense.
Dimezz, the first thing he says is this about Coppergate?
I was never convicted. You can't prove anything.
Maybe Grams. No, that's still being investigated. He
We
looks
shouldn't.
down to Dimezz and then to the man quickly.
Uh, the
No one could prove anything, Dimezz. You don't need to.
Yeah.
Alexander frowns a bit and says, "No, not exactly. It would mostly be about Groundcastle, in fact."
Dimezz
what?
tries to remember anything that he might have done that might have made people
To
upset
Dimezz.
in Grand Castle.
Give me an intelligence check to remember something.
Let's
It
see.
happens. Dimezz just like, God.
He gets these flashbacks and then he remembers. He's like, ah!
He tears off his tunic and runs
Yep.
screaming like,
Into the sea.
Yeah.
All right. Dimezz would at least remember that Marcus said that he used to be in jail in Groundcastle until Dimezz came along and broke him out.
Oh dear.
Well, you know.
And we can sidles closer to Graham and whispers, Is Dimezz a terrorist?
Grams sort of frowns. I've heard that word exactly once, and I think last time I was about to be recruited to be one.
And he sort of looks at Graham with a raised eyebrow. You're a
Still
terrorist?
entirely sure what it means.
I think it means to bring terror.
To some, I imagine, or it's not necessarily on purpose.
I'm a situational terrorist.
Situational terror.
it's just my side job. Terror by night and
Flower picking by day.
Well, they have been talking to a lot of children and
Dimezz slowly nods and says, I guess I can take you up on that offer.
Excellent. Do rest assured that I have no ulterior motives. It is merely
Instantly thinks he has many ulterior motives.
I would like to do sort of an up-down, size him up. Does he think you could take this guy?
give me a wisdom check.
All right. Does he seem to be formidable,
The
basically?
most trustworthy people are the people who say they have no ulterior motives.
Formidable, yes. Although it does seem like he's a bit on the older side, as well as being a commander rather than a brute. Alone, Graham could certainly take him.
All right, Count Grossi. And this dinner will be with you there.
Yes, that is the intention. So we can talk.
In your ship.
We could eat elsewhere if you'd like, but I, of course, would like to invite you to my home, as is proper.
Anakin looks up at the thing. I suppose so.
You could take the guy, And
Yeah,
there's guest right and whatnot. He doesn't know.
It's true.
I mean, surely these outsiders have something similar, right? Sure.
I mean, yeah, I would imagine. Bread and salt.
It's
you know?
strange people. It's basically Dimezz's family to go now. They came from the city.
They seem to be good friends.
And this guy too. What's his name? Teredas Makkelson. He's from there too, as it turns out.
It's true. Therodas is from there. Everyone's invited.
There's a little uneasy thing about those two being sort of only real representation, but they'll be fine. He's going to Sterling Hold. That's a nice place anyway.
That's what we get from the mainlands, man. We get these religious fanatics, and then these crazy people with flying
Just like
fortresses.
beach
Floating.
sailing fortresses onto our beaches.
Yeah, and then crazy paladins spew forth to go and
He also
quest.
thinks that it's never going to get repaired because there's not that much iron in anywhere out here.
We need to mine the
Melt
mountains
down
dry.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not gonna find it in this village probably.
Could be an illusion. He's curious to see it inside. He did some ship stuff when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
Can rake a sail and
Oh sure.
row and steer and such. But,
Uh-huh.
this is this is mad.
I mean, yes, that is absolutely crazy. But if we have a chance to see it from the inside, sure, let's go and take a look at
Yeah.
that. I mean, this
Why
is
not?
assuming that this person is just not a crazy person. Which
If so, then we can deal with it.
we have dealt with crazy before. It's true.
Program will give American the eyes that says, "Let's go along with it, and then we'll deal with it when we get."
Anakin will give a faint nod
And
back.
it's like, "I can make the dead walk," and we're like, "Yes, you can."
Yes,
Now
of course.
let's go and see that, and then we'll kill him. There's nothing to it.
Death cannot hold me. Well,
So yeah, we'll go to his dinner, and
yeah.
Might I suggest before you 4, 5, 6 kind of tries to count the members currently running away, head further into town that you perhaps leave your points at Edeling and the skeleton of the term outside. As it is currently, tensions in the village are high. Our stay isn't exactly welcomed, and the locals do not seem to be as willing to entertain guests for as long as we have stayed here so far. Although, of course, we are not staying here by choice, but things are moving slowly.
frowned, understanding that suddenly having to subsidize 1,000 people in such a village, just come here and show up beaching their thing right on there.
It doesn't
It's
look.
not necessarily.
It doesn't look that there's a lot of good farmland here either.
No. I mean, the people in the big ship
imagine
probably have their
it's-
fruit with them.
Yeah, I hope
the
it's a
thought.
lot of dried fish and stuff that last them for 2 years.
And this
or
guy
whatever they
seems
have.
to be just chewing casually on food, so probably they
I
have.
mean, he's the admiral, so he has all the good stuff.
I mean,
right?
allegedly.
Yeah,
He's also
allegedly.
inviting us to eat as a leisure activity, so
That's true.
hopefully it's not complete ship food.
Pickled
Graham
herring
certainly
for
is
everyone.
not great food you eat when you're on a boat with like hundreds of thousands of people sailing to somewhere from very far. So,
Oh.
then again, he doesn't know how far away this place is. Maybe that's what we should have invaded.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, at the words of Admiral Alexander as he introduced himself, Faradas will not look towards the skeleton and say, I cannot leave him alone outside of town. I will have to guard him, and I will say that I do not mind camping even in this weather. Do take your time to prepare. I myself feel like I'm ready, although of course that will still have to be proven. If you wish to take a couple of days to both physically and mentally prepare yourself still, then please do. He nods and heads back out of town.
sure. Graham will lean into the Edling and just be ready. As he will just sort of, look at him and then lose the slight glow in his eye sockets and just sort of rattle down, where after the bones just sort of, you look there and then you look again, and then there are just fewer, and they sort of just melt away into ash.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. You look much more presentable now.
Like someone frowns, looking at the man with his suspenders.
Yeah, his like
weird
weird
fancy clothes.
woolen coat thing and furry hat. Furry hats are
All of which quite drenched at this point.
is drenched
Graham
rats.
feels his own like cloak and the clothing that's still keeping him warm, dry at the core.
Graham looks at him and says, "This cloak I made from a scale of a sea serpent, I will have you know."
Doesn't say anything. Guy can be rude all he likes.
We know where it's gonna end up in the end. Let the fool talk.
I feel he still has a part to play in things to come.
Sure. Let's get fancy. Anarkin will approach fancy.
Yes, you do that. I'll.
Says,
Fancy's reaction is basically the lines, so you want to eat and sleep aboard this broken ship of this person who swears that he owns the broken ship after our prior experiences upon a ship.
At least the ship is not going anywhere. It's beached and not moving. And wouldn't it be fascinating to see what's inside of it?
Fancy does not even look remotely fascinated.
Well,
And when asking about the paladin with a wooden smile, clearly not believing that, and told that he chose to camp outside, and those are her options.
to keep the undead dragon company, he said. I guess we could stay with him.
Fancy will elect to follow along with the crew because it seems the
The lesser of two evils.
marginally superior.
I'll take it. Marginally superior.
It's my street name.
Yep, marginally superior in the house.
That's a lengthy name.
I know.
MS is called.
I don't go out much.
You that would just be shortened to Marge. Like, hey Marge.
It's not a good street name.
Marge.
Anyway.
I'm called the Snowman.
I bet you are.
Story for another time.
Alright, take us to your magic swirling ship. Cast your sleeping spell out
A
away.
very reluctant Fancy with a wooden smile on her face, moving a little stiffly, almost mechanically.
Yeah, it looks like the ship has been beached close enough to the shore, almost adjacent to a sort of mini cliff, as it were, that they simply built a rather temporary, although at this point it looks